My parents shoved my daughter aside on her birthday and said, "Wait, let us check the cake." Then they put my niece in front of it. My niece blew out the candles, dove into the cake with her hands, and everyone applauded. My little girl just stood there, staring at what was meant to be her day. My mother handed her an empty cake box, and with a flat tone said, "Here, lick it." My sister laughed. "Don't invite us again. You know my daughter is the star of this family." Everyone then began giving their wrapped gifts to my niece. When my daughter moved forward, my father barked, "Hurry up, your niece is waiting for your present. Give it to her." I said nothing. What I did afterward left them in ruins. My name is Sarah. I'm a single mother to a remarkable 7-year-old, Emma. This is the story of the day my family crossed a line so unforgivable it changed everything. A little background. I've always been the family scapegoat. My older sister Madison was treated as the golden child. She married Derek, an investment banker, and they have an 8-year-old daughter, Sophia. Emma's father left when she was 2, and I've raised her alone while working as a nurse. My parents, Robert and Linda, have made their preference obvious. Madison and Sophia get the best of everything: houses, attention, status, while Emma and I have stayed on the sidelines. Emma's 7th birthday felt like an opportunity to give her the celebration she deserved. I saved for months to rent a community center, planned a princess theme, invited family and Emma's school friends, bought decorations, hired a face painter, and ordered a custom princess cake with Emma's name in pink frosting. The morning of the party she could hardly contain herself. The dress, the tiara, the excitement. I felt proud. This would be her day. At the community center, everything was set. The cake on its special table, decorations in place, kids arriving with wrapped presents. For a moment, I thought I'd managed it. Then my family arrived. Madison in designer clothes, Derek in an expensive suit, Sophia in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. My parents followed, and I could see the judgment in their faces at our modest venue. "This is quaint," my mother said with false sweetness. Madison offered a sarcastic, "Sarah, you really outdid yourself," and then headed straight for the food. I focused on Emma, who eagerly showed her grandparents the decorations. My father gave her a distracted pat, then turned his attention to Sophia, who demanded her special chair. The party started well. Emma and her friends loved the face painter and games. But my family gathered together, whispering and throwing looks our way. When I called everyone for cake, Emma stood in front of the pink frosted cake, radiant. That's when my father stepped forward. "Wait, let us check the cake," he said, and physically moved Emma aside. My mother pulled Sophia forward and positioned her in front of the cake. "Sophia, make a wish," she cooed. Sophia leaned in and blew out the candles on my daughter's cake. The room erupted in applause for Sophia. Emma stood frozen, tears forming, while her friends looked confused. Sophia then grabbed fistfuls of cake with her bare hands and shoved them in her mouth, as people laughed and my mother snapped photos. I tried to speak up. My mother, with a cold look, picked up an empty cake box and shoved it into Emma's hands. "Here, lick it," she said. Madison laughed and declared, "Don't ever invite us again. You already know my daughter is the spotlight of this family." Then one by one my parents and sister handed their presents to Sophia, even presents clearly meant for Emma. When Emma stepped forward, hopeful, my father barked, "Come on, your niece is waiting for your gift. Hand it over." He forced my 7-year-old to give away a present she had received from a friend. I stood frozen and said nothing. The shame of failing to protect my daughter burns me still. I'd been conditioned to accept their abuse. That day I couldn't defend her. The party wound down quickly. Guests left uncomfortable. My family left without looking back. Emma retreated to a corner and cried. I knelt beside her. She pulled away and whispered, "Why didn't they want me to have my birthday?" I had no easy answer for a 7-year-old. How do you explain that some adults, even family, can be cruel and thoughtless? That night, once Emma was asleep, something in me changed. Years of seeing my family belittle me and diminish my daughter hardened into a determination: if they were going to treat Emma like this, I would make sure there were consequences. I started quietly. I documented every cruel remark, every instance of favoritism, every humiliation. I saved texts, recorded calls, one-party consent where legal, and kept detailed notes. Then, 3 weeks after the party, Madison called asking to borrow $5,000 because Derek's bonus was delayed and bills were due. After what they'd done to Emma, the request felt obscene. I refused. Madison accused me of jealousy and dismissed the birthday incident as nothing. But her desperation in that call revealed something important. When people are financially strained, they make mistakes. I paid closer attention to their public life. Derek's social media showed a lavish lifestyle, but deeper digging, legal, careful research revealed they were over-leveraged and barely keeping up. More significantly, I discovered Derek had been running a side consulting business that violated his firm's employment policies. I compiled screenshots of his consulting site, business registration, client mentions tying him to his day job, and bank records showing income flowing to accounts not disclosed to his employer. I sent the evidence to his firm's compliance department. Within a week, Derek was fired. That was only the beginning. Madison's status in the community was everything to her. Charity boards, fundraising, social events. I began to scrutinize her nonprofit involvement and found a pattern of falsified expense reports, mileage claims for trips she hadn't taken, and small but consistent diversions of charity funds. Over 3 years, the amounts added up to nearly $15,000, taken from an organization that helped underprivileged children. I assembled bank statements, receipts, credit card records, and expense reports. Everything needed to show deliberate embezzlement. I anonymously provided the evidence to the charity board and to the district attorney. Within weeks, Madison was arrested on embezzlement charges. A newspaper headline read, "Prominent socialite charged with embezzling from children's charity," and her mugshot was online. Madison called me from jail, begging for help. I refused. She accused me of turning her in. I told her she had made deliberate choices. Stealing from children was not a mistake, and it had consequences. I hung up. My parents reacted by taking out a home equity loan to fund an expensive lawyer and filing for grandparents' rights, accusing me of alienating them from Emma. They tried to recast themselves as loving grandparents kept away by a vengeful daughter. They bet everything on winning custody. I had anticipated this possibility. I had built a file, dated notes, audio, text messages, photos from the birthday showing Sophia eating the cake while Emma held an empty box, and statements from other parents who'd witnessed the scene. I also arranged for a professional assessment of Emma's well-being. In court, the judge interviewed Emma in chambers. She calmly described how her grandparents had made her feel sad and excluded, recounted the birthday incident, and stated she didn't want to see them because they made her feel bad about herself. The judge's decision was decisive. She found a pattern of emotional abuse and extreme favoritism harmful to Emma's psychological development. My parents were denied visitation. The court issued a restraining order preventing them from contacting Emma or coming near her school. They were ordered to pay my legal fees and to undergo mandatory counseling before petitioning to see her again. Local headlines followed. Judge terminates grandparents' rights after finding pattern of emotional abuse. The article named my parents and detailed the court's findings. Emma was not named. My father called me in defeat and asked, "How could you do this to us? We love Emma." I answered simply, "You humiliated Emma publicly at her birthday. That mattered." He said they made mistakes. I said the humiliation belonged to Emma, not to them. I told him I had finally realized that family loyalty should not require tolerating cruelty. That was our last conversation. As for Derek and Madison, the fallout continued. Derek's regulatory troubles led to criminal charges and civil suits. His consulting business shut down. He was barred from working in finance. Madison faced possible prison time. Their house went to foreclosure. They moved into a small apartment and enrolled Sophia in public school, after pulling her from a private one. The same people who once judged me for renting an apartment and being a single mother found themselves living a life they'd once looked down on. I don't take pleasure in their collapse. My actions were motivated by a need to protect my daughter and to ensure that emotional abuse carried consequences. The story isn't just about punishment, it's about holding people accountable and protecting a child who deserved to be seen and valued. That's what happened when my family chose to humiliate my daughter on her birthday. It changed us all. Now Madison and Derek were in the same downward spiral, but with criminal charges added to their troubles. Still, the most satisfying part of what I did was yet to happen. My parents, overwhelmed by legal fees from the failed custody fight and the cost of supporting Madison's defense, were forced to put their house on the market, the house that symbolized their superiority. The place where they'd hosted gatherings and made Emma feel small became a financial burden they could no longer carry. I had prepared for this moment for months. I picked up extra shifts, saved relentlessly, liquidated some investments, and took a loan against a retirement account. Combined with a mortgage I secured, I had enough cash to make a competitive bid. When the house listed, I submitted an offer through a holding company and lawyer for exactly $10,000 below asking. It was low enough to sting, but high enough to be taken seriously, given their desperate situation. They accepted. The closing was set for a Friday. I arranged for Emma to be at school, and for Derek's mother to pick her up later. I wanted to handle the closing on my own. I arrived early and watched my parents' car pull in. They looked older, worn from months of legal battles and money stress. The deed transfer proceeded in tense silence. Documents were signed, checks exchanged, keys passed over. At the very end, when the title officer handed my father the paperwork showing the buyer's name, his face went white. "You," he whispered, hands trembling. "Me," I confirmed calmly. My mother burst into angry, frustrated tears and shouted, "How could you do this to us? We're your parents." "This was our home," I said. "Now it's mine. Emma's home." My father accused me of orchestrating everything. Derek's job loss, Madison's arrest, the custody battle. I replied that I hadn't made anyone commit crimes or be cruel. I only ensured there were consequences for their choices. The title officer cleared his throat and announced the transfer complete. The property now belonged to me. My parents gathered their papers and left. My mother turned once more and said, "I hope this was worth it." I answered, "It's justice. Yes, it was worth it." I sat in the conference room for 10 minutes afterward, processing that I now owned the house where I'd felt like an outsider for years. The house needed repairs. My parents had been unable to maintain it, but it had good bones and, crucially, space for Emma to feel truly at home. I began planning. The formal dining room would become a playroom, the study a reading nook, and Emma's bedroom would be twice its current size. Sunday evening I picked Emma up from Derek's mother's house, and as we drove home, told her the news. "Good news or bad news?" she asked. "Very good news," I said. I told her we were moving into Grandpa and Grandma's big house. "Yes, the one with a swimming pool." After a long pause, she asked, "We get to live in the big house?" I said, "Yes." She unbuckled, hugged me from behind, and squealed, "Mommy, this is the best surprise ever." That night, as I tucked her into bed in our small apartment for what would be one of the last times, she asked if she'd get another backyard birthday. "Absolutely," I said. "You'll get to blow out your own candles." Meanwhile, Madison panicked. Without Derek's income and with legal bills mounting, their life unraveled. They listed their house at too high a price, and it sat unsold while mortgage payments piled up. My father called and implored me to help, to lend money to keep the family together. I refused. When he threatened repercussions if I didn't help, I remembered Emma's face on her ruined birthday and held firm. Under pressure, my parents borrowed another $100,000 against their home equity to prop up Madison's lifestyle. That compounded their debt and ensured they'd have to sell. I had set aside money from my grandmother's estate, intended for Emma's future, and I used that, plus a loan, to make my offer. By the day of closing, my father's hands actually shook when he saw my name on the certified check. My mother cried in anger. The house that had been a symbol of their superiority was now ours. I paid cash and moved Emma and me into the home. The backyard and pool that had once been off limits to us were now ours to use. I threw Emma the party. She should have had friends, parents who'd witnessed the original humiliation, and a cake meant just for her. She blew out her candles, ate her cake, and opened her presents. The photos show her beaming. Madison reacted with fury, calling and blaming me for everything. I told her I wasn't covering up their choices. Derek's fraudulent side work, Madison's embezzlement, and my parents' leveraged lifestyle were their decisions, not mine to fix. She accused me of ruining an 8-year-old's life. I told her Sophia would adapt, and that her entitlement might eventually be good for her growth. She called me evil. I called myself protective. Our last exchanges ended with the fact that they had no leverage left, no money, no influence. I also used other, quieter pressure points. I had been documenting Madison's social media for months, screenshots of curated luxury that clashed with her real behavior. I compiled a timeline, including images from Emma's birthday, showing Sophia eating the cake while Emma held an empty box. I anonymously shared this material with parenting bloggers and influencer watch groups, framing it around authenticity concerns. Within 48 hours, Madison's polished online brand unraveled. Critics surfaced, sponsors pulled out, and her income stream collapsed. An unexpected ally emerged, a judge who happened to have seen both birthday parties and who told me that what she'd witnessed looked like emotional abuse. Her willingness to provide a witness statement opened a legal path I hadn't previously considered. I researched grandparents' rights and found that visitation could be terminated if the grandparents' behavior harmed the child's emotional well-being. I filed to formally terminate their visitation rights and presented the evidence I'd collected: witness statements, photos, and professional assessments. The court found a pattern of emotional abuse and extreme favoritism and terminated my parents' visitation rights. They were ordered to pay legal fees and attend counseling. The local paper ran the story: Judge terminates grandparents' rights after finding pattern of emotional abuse. Madison called after the story hit. "Are you happy now?" she sobbed. "You've destroyed everything. Sophia's life is ruined." I remained composed. Sophia would be fine, and perhaps this upheaval would be a lesson. Madison accused me of being evil. I said I was protective and that she had nothing left to threaten me with. And it was true. Months later, Derek found entry-level work at a small firm. Madison took a retail job. They lived paycheck to paycheck in a 2-bedroom apartment. My parents had moved into a senior housing complex. Sophia, now 10, adjusted to ordinary life without designer clothes or constant doting. I believed it would help her grow. Emma and I thrived in our new home. She had a proper bedroom with the princess decor she'd wanted, friends over regularly, and access to the pool. She joined the soccer team, excelled at school, and, most importantly, learned she was valued. Her 8th birthday in our backyard was a confirmation. Surrounded by people who cared for her, she made a wish and told me later, "I wish that every kid could feel as special as I do." That made everything worthwhile. The experience taught me about boundaries and consequences. For years I'd enabled my family by staying silent and excusing their cruelty. I told myself I was keeping the peace, but in truth I was teaching Emma to accept poor treatment. When I finally acted, I did it without spectacle, with preparation, patience, and legal, thoughtful measures. I didn't fabricate wrongdoing. I documented their choices and let consequences follow. I stopped protecting them from the results of their behavior, while protecting my daughter from their toxicity. 2 years later, Emma is a thriving 10-year-old who knows she's loved. We have no contact with my parents, Madison, Derek, or Sophia. Emma doesn't ask about them anymore. Our family of 2 is healthier and happier than ever. People ask if I regret what I did or if I went too far. I always answer the same way. I look at Emma's confident smile and know I'd do it again. They tried to teach her she didn't matter. I taught them she matters most. That wasn't revenge, it was protection. And I will never apologize for protecting my daughter.